Okay, now we'll come back to the question and answer. And the first thing I'm going to pass out is these. If you would like one when I come by, raise your hand. Okay, if you don't want one, that's okay. What this is a tool that I used a long time ago, figured out how to do it, and every time I write a book, I run a whole bunch of them thinking I'm going to use this pattern forever, and then the pattern changes. But what this really helps me, and especially if you're working on more than one book at a time. Did I give you one of these when you were in my office? All right. You start off at the top of the page. You're going to write the name of the book. You're going to write with the day you started to remind you you're not supposed to work on it longer than a year. And with each chapter, there's plenty of space to write the viewpoint character, who's the viewpoint character, character information that you need to know, that you need to remember, the page number that each chapter is on, the plot point that happens if there's a turning place in the plot point. And I fill this out with each book as I work through it, and it keeps me honest. It keeps me, okay, I haven't used this person's viewpoint and their viewpoint character. I haven't mentioned the plot point here. It really keeps me honest. The page number changes constantly, and so I erase, and that spot looks terrible. Then the most important thing I do is over at the side, on each one of these little bitty squares at the end, if my critique group reads the chapter, I check it off so that I will never bring the same chapter to a critique group. We had a critique group one time that a lady brought the same chapter like 7 times, and we were really tired of reading it after the 7th time. Yeah. You weren't? Oh. Was it? Oh, that is funny. And so, if you have a reader read it, or if, in my case, I have Julia, that's my assistant, read it, and whenever I check that off. And this really, really helps. And at the end, I see that I've gone through each chapter about 8 times. And sometimes it goes out into the margin. So that gives you a good tool to use. Now, we're going to take questions, and the board is going to, along here we've assembled, or it's all going to answer the question. Well, what's the first question? Yes.
You always write in order. Do you ever write a scene that might be the end and then go back and fill in?
Well, that's a good question.
I always write in order. I know, though, of writers who they only know how to write scenes, and then when they get through with all the scenes, then they put them together. Which, yeah, but I have to go linear.
I do not write in order because my life is so crazy during the day, and scenes will pop into my head at the most inconvenient times. And I have learned that if you ignore it, you'll never get it back. Those brilliant pieces of writing, the characters, the story ideas. And so what I've tried to do is make a habit. I carry a notebook with me, and this is one thing Jody taught us in our class. I have notebooks everywhere, napkins, sticky notes. I have an idea journal. Wherever I'm at, I stop and jot down my idea, because this book is a good example of that. I wrote a little story about a cowboy in Jody's class as a class assignment, and 10 years later, an email pops up and said they're taking story submissions for a little anthology called West Texas Christmas Stories by West Texas authors. Sent that sucker in, and boom. So do not delete what you've written. Do not discard it. Do not think, because you just never know when the opportunities might come up. And so I write several different things all at once. I don't write it in order. Scrivener is what I use because I can go in and just have the main topic. I write a scene. I may write the ending of my book, and I still have 20 more chapters to go. And that's just because my life is crazy, and I just write when I can.
All right. Well, if I have an idea for a scene that will come later, I always make sure to write that down. I actually, instead of having notebooks everywhere, I carry my phone everywhere, and I have a Google Doc, and I have a million files in it. And one of them is called Unwritten Stories, and it just has ideas for stories or even just a title or a name of a character. You're going to forget it if you don't write it down. If you wake up in the middle of the night and say, "Oh, I'll remember it in the morning," you are lying to yourself. That is the writer devil telling you lies. Now, the other thing is, for every book I'm writing, I also have something I call a supplemental file. And as I'm writing my book, two things: if I have an idea for something that's going to happen, I will go and I will write that down in the book. But also, if I have an idea of something I need to change or fix, I have a never look back philosophy. I will just take that bit of information and I'll put it in my supplemental file. And then when I finish the book, I can go back and make changes. That way I'm not constantly going back and rewriting the same book, because these are my first two finished good books. I have one that just died on the page because I kept going back and making changes. And you can fix everything in post. You can edit a book into something wonderful. If you never finish the book, that is not going to happen. So my philosophy is you always write them down, because like I said, you're going to forget it. You put that in the supplemental file, and then when you need an idea or when you need to go back, you can take that and make those changes. So there you go.
It's a great idea.
I write in order pretty much. Once in a while, there'll be a little scene that I'll jot down a paragraph on and save for later. But I write in order because I don't know where I'm going. I'm not sure how this is going to end. And once I see the ending of a book, I write it as fast as possible. And I always rush the ending. And my editor every time will say, "Take a little more time on the ending. You rushed it." And every single time. So the reason is I lose interest in the book when I know how it's going to end. So it's not near as interesting to me. But sometimes I write longer than I planned a night, because I want to see what's happening. So that doesn't make sense, but that's how it is for me. Okay, next question. Yes. Okay, I'll let Natalie start with that.
I think it's crucial because you have to have your characters conflict. You've got to have conflict. And so if I have an idea for a character, there's lots of good characterization books. I use 45 Characters is a great book, and I kind of know what my main character, her personality, what she would do, and I want something that absolutely conflicts with that. So there's tension throughout your book. And so I spend a lot of time on characters. Like the book I'm working on now is a Western, and it's a pioneer. It's a book that I've had in my mind a long time, and I finished it, and I realized I did not have an antagonist, and I had the white kid, the pioneer, down, and I had a Comanche kid, and I went back and completely rewrote it, or I added chapters from the Comanche kid's point of view, because I realized his personality was an absolute conflict. It's two enemies that hate each other, and their whole worldview is completely different. And so I knew the Comanche's worldview, I knew the white kid pioneer worldview, and how conflicting are they about everything. And it just made a high adventure tale, because everything that happened to them was in conflict and I knew their characters. I knew how they were going to react. I knew their background. I knew they both have flaws. You know, the white kid was abused by his dad. The Comanche kid has an injury. What Comanche kid can survive with an injury? You know, and Linda's characters are real good like that too. So I'll let you go next.
Okay, thank you. I thrive on conflict in fiction. Not so much in real life, but in fiction, I want as much as I can get. I have a series of 3 brothers I've just finished, and their father, and one of the brothers they didn't know about. Nobody knew about him, not even the father. So, but that provided tons of conflict. Because he grew up with nothing, they had everything. And he had no identity. They had each other, and he wants what they have.
So you do all this backstory analysis?
No, it comes as I write. It comes as I write. Yeah, a lot of it I do not know. I write by the seat of my pants. So the stories come to me slowly. Usually at the first I know some, but I don't know a lot. When I started one book, the guy gets hung in the first chapter, and there it starts with conflict. In another one of the brothers, he's standing in front of the preacher marrying the woman he's always wanted. A shot rings out and she's dead. So immediate conflict, and that grabs a reader, and they want to know what happens. How are you going to deal with this? So, yeah. Another one, it's mainly about a woman who's going blind, and she's the sole support of her family. So this means death for them if she can't hunt and get food, and they're all gonna lose. And so lots of conflict. That's how to keep a story moving and going and keep it going.
All right. I talk about all these different little files I keep. One is usually a character file. It was this book here has a smaller cast, and I was able to keep track of everyone pretty easily. I still had a list of things from their background as they occurred to me. I know Kim Black has a workbook for if you want to plan your characters out ahead of time, and that's an excellent resource because it gives you just enough to do it to what you need to know to get going. Because she has an example. But once again, since my philosophy is to get the book done, I know a lot of people get caught up in, especially for fantasy and sci-fi, people get caught up in the world building, and people will build their worlds for years without ever starting the book. Whereas if you start the book, you can build a lot of that world as you go. I think you need to have enough background to know your characters, but if you know your characters well enough, I would say hop in and but make sure to jot down, they struggle with alcoholism. They had this horrific event in their past. They really like ponies. Whatever it is. If it's important to the story, it's worth jotting down because you're the only source for that information. So make sure you get it written down. All right.
For me, I like to meet my characters. It's like they sit down and I meet them, and I begin to get to know them. And it's kind of like every person you meet gets prettier or they ugly up. And that's kind of how it is. You know, you meet some people that you think are gorgeous, and after you've known them a while, you think, yeah, you know. So it's the same way with characters with me. I kind of meet them. I have an idea of where they came from, and I believe that every character should have a few secrets. I think we all have secrets. Everybody in this room has secrets that nobody knows but you. And I think every character should have secrets. Yeah, I think that adds depth to them. But okay, the next question. Yes. Pantsers versus plotters. Okay. I guess since I just described a pantser, I don't really think of myself as either. There's one kind of that's in the middle, and I think of a theme of a book, and I never even talk about the theme in the book, but I always have a theme in a book. I just finished a mainstream book that's going to be out in April, and the theme of it is how do you store your memories? You know, a lot of people just make them up and put them in, and some people ignore their memories, but how do you store your memories? And it's about a quilt shop. Okay.
I am a definite pantser. I don't want to know too much about my story. If I do, it kind of ruins something. It ruins my enthusiasm, my excitement. I want the surprises and to feel my way through the story. It seems like it just kills something for me to outline, to know too much. So, yeah.
I think I'm a combination of both because I can't waste time sitting at the computer deciding are her eyes blue or green. Because that, you know, or what color's her hair? What color was her hair in chapter 1? So I've got most of that figured out, and I kind of know where I'm going. I usually have an ending before I start. But if you will just dig yourself into the story and not really just let your characters take over, I think that's when the magic happens. So I try not, in my day job as accounting, I'm very much a type A personality and everything. And it's hard not to do that with writing, but you can't do that because you lose, I think, the magic.
Yeah. I mentioned having a book that never quite got finished, and one of the reasons is I meticulously, I did the world build, I got caught in the world building trap, and I meticulously outlined every single thing that was going to happen in that book. And a year later, when I got there, I didn't care anymore about it. And it was hard to make it care. Whereas, like with Four Color Bleed, I got to the end and I said, oh man, the last one happened in a building. Where am I going to make this one happen? I want it to be bigger. And I got to my final scene, and since I'm dealing with more action-oriented stuff, I made the situation as impossible as I could. I made it difficult, and I got there and I said, I have no idea how they're going to get out of this. And one of my favorite things in the whole book is how they figured out to get out of it, because it felt like the characters thought it up rather than I thinking it up. And that's an amazing trick. Like Linda said, you get there and you let your characters be your characters, and that's when the magic happens. I will make a caveat, though. I mentioned that I've been doing this as a stay-at-home dad. My time, like Natalie said, often your time is limited. We're all working. A lot of us are working our day jobs as well. So if I know I'm going to be writing all day Sunday, and that's the only day I'm going to get where I can just sit at the computer all day, sometimes I will outline the scene I'm planning on doing that day for my next few writing sessions, because it gives you it makes your time a little more utilized. But I don't think I would ever outline an entire book again if I could help it.
I think your character should definitely come alive. My husband tells me not to tell this story, but it's true. One night he woke up and my study was off the bedroom, and he could hear me laughing, and it kept waking him up. And finally he went in and he said, "What are you laughing in here? You're by yourself. Why are you laughing?" And I said, "Grayson, who was my main character, just told me a joke I hadn't heard." So that's kind of how you get into the characters and they come alive. All right. Next question. Yes.
I'll probably die before they do. My memoir is not going to get published.
Are we going to be accessories? I just want to make sure.
No, I just wanted to know if anybody's had the experience writing a memoir. I may be dying. Change the name.
My mother, name changed.
I don't know. There's an old saying: you've got to write like your mother's dead, because when you first start writing, there's so many things you don't want to write down because your mother might read them, and just make a pen name and go or change the names of the characters. I wouldn't wait. I mean, that's too long. Yeah. Yeah.
I actually got my motivation because in 2002, my doctor said, talk about motivation. Go out there and write. Now I'm sitting on that manuscript for 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Either do it by a pen name or do it. Oh, they probably won't read it. Really, you know.
Family don't read your work.
Cousin story.
I grew up with a cousin that we spent the summers together, and when I sold my first book, I sent her a book, and she said thank you, and sent her a book again, Finally, after about 7 books, I figured out she wasn't reading them, because most people that buy a book don't read it. They don't read the whole book. That they say that only 2 to 4% of people who are listening to a speaker and they buy a book read the book, and meaning speakers like motivational speakers and stuff. So a lot of people don't read it. So just bring it out and don't mention it to her, and she probably won't even know about it. But if it's the truth, if it's your truth, yeah. You know, and it might give her a chance to apologize. Who knows? Okay, anybody else want to comment?
My sister Jan, who most of you have met, she wrote a creative nonfiction book. All the events are true, and she gave them fictional names because for the same problem. People, you want to say stuff that the people might not like, but she fictionalized the names, but that's all, and it's a category or a genre called creative nonfiction. So you might do that.
What's her last name?
Sykes.
Yeah, and they're
Jan
phenomenal
Sykes.
books.
Yeah.
I told all my family at Easter, I said, I've used everybody's name in it, I just use first names. I said, if you don't like it, you better speak up now for the stuff in there concerning some family stuff, and the people that it was about read it, and they didn't even recognize themselves in it, so.
I could add just a little. One thing from my perspective is I based the character on someone that I'd known and my experiences with them, and they came up to me later and said, "Oh, I loved your book so much." They had no idea it was them, and I thought it was like a nightmare situation for a second, but it turned out okay. All right. I will give an example of this though. Is my friend Travis Irwin? He wrote a book called The Feed Store Chronicles, and it is hilarious, and it's a memoir piece, and in it there is a character who is the most horrible man ever. Like, he is just a terrible person, and that guy loved the book. He loved being the bad guy in that book. No, he knew it was him. I mean, and he thought it was great. He liked being that person. But you know what? Just as my advice would be, if it's people that you care about the relationship, I would be honest and write honestly, because I mean, your memoir, your story, you're the only person that can write that. I mean, that's important information. I think that's great. Then you're, yeah, see, and that's part of it, is people don't see themselves as bad people. But you know what? It might be worth taking that book or that memoir and sharing it with them before it goes out, and just saying, hey, this is what I'm wanting to put out, and you're welcome to look at it. She says no. I'd be upfront about it, own it. You know what? If it's a relationship that's valuable to you, I'd say own it. If it's not a valuable relationship to you, why worry about it? You know what I mean? I tried to find the quote. I couldn't find it. Neil Gaiman, and it's something somebody mentioned down here. I think it was Neil Gaiman said, if they didn't want to be portrayed badly, they should have been better people. And that's kind of,
So, she doesn't even see it, and everybody else does, so I just go,
Okay, next question. Yes.
Ryan, I've been staring at your covers since they're up. Can you talk a little bit about how you, because these are self-published,
these are self-published. Yeah, I can talk about that.
find someone to do such great covers? Because you're so interested.
Well, yeah, I can talk, and I know Natalie can talk because her covers are gorgeous. So, what I did is I actually have a blog on this topic. If you want to check my website, ryanmcswain.com, it's and it talks. It'll be on there, but I can explain it a little bit. It was nerve-wracking finding a cover artist, because there are so many out there, and the prices can go from a lot of money for a terrible cover, and these were extremely reasonable. These were very easy. He worked hourly. I can even give you the name. I don't want to mess up his website, but his name is Rory Harnden, and he's from the Netherlands. And his website is, let me get the right number of R's, rrry.me. And totally contact him. Sometimes it takes a little while to hear back from him, but check him out. The way I found a cover artist is I looked at every possible place I could. I went to websites, I went on Twitter, and what I finally did is there's a website called Reddit, and there was an artist on there who was doing free book covers for writers, and that had been a long time ago, and I didn't need a free one. I wanted one that he spent time on. But when I saw what his work was like, I said, that's exactly the kind of stuff I want. So I contacted him and said, would you be interested in doing the cover? He got back to me, yes, of course. I had some stuff on hand, and I think I may have done this in my notes for my last talk, but I had a few just images that kind of went along with my book, because your cover artist is not going to read your book. That's just, I don't even think like the big writers, I think they probably pretend to read it. But the way it works is you just give them some things to work with, and then they'll usually come back to you. Hopefully they'll give you a couple of different options, and then you say run with it, and they'll get it back to you. The guy Rory worked hourly, so that made it even more reasonable, because these guys, they'll have an eye for it. But I think does that clear a little bit of it up? Find someone with an art style you like, and we've said before to match it to your genre. I didn't do that as well with Four Color Bleed. I had a very distinct vision of what I wanted, and he turned something even better. So I'm very happy with it.
For this book, I use Megan Hale, Meghan Hail, and she's in Canyon and works in Amarillo. And this is clip art. And here's the problem. Because I knew exactly what I wanted, and we used several different horses. I even had pictures of black horses. And if you can find a graphic designer, they know Adobe Suite, and they can do some awesome things for your cover. But we purchased the clip art. The Wild West town scene, I can use unlimited. The horse, I'm limited to 200,000 print books. If I ever get to 200,000, wouldn't that be awesome? But so when you buy clip art, you have to be aware there's licenses. The font, I purchased the font, which is mine, and I can use it on, because I wanted a distinct font to use a whole series. So those are the things you decide. If you're traditional, you don't decide any of that. If you're indie author, if you like that kind of stuff and you're a type A personality and you want to be involved in every step, that is the kind of the things you're going to have to do. Do you want This is called Matte.
Yes, matte or gloss covers.
Yeah. This book was a photograph, and I had lots of oil field photographs. The minute I saw this photograph, I knew this was the cover. And these are free if y'all want one about American Energy because it was an educational thing. So anyway, and then now my next book's Philip Gessert, Gessert, GessertBooks.com. He is a formatter. He's very reasonable. He does all the covers. He is in Amarillo.
Actually, he moved to Wyoming.
No.
Or no, Wisconsin, sorry. Madison, Wisconsin.
did?
He just, really recently. I'm sorry, but you know what? He doesn't have to be here to do
No,
your
he
book.
doesn't.
And
Wow.
he'll be by to visit
I
sometime,
met him at
I'm
the
sure.
coffee shop one time. Okay, so when you're doing that, you need to request because you're going to need an ebook cover and you're going to need a print cover, which are two totally different files. So you need somebody who understands that. Anyway.
I have one more quick thing to add. I'm sorry, I didn't think about it, but the art on the cover, this one I think is all clip art, and it was public domain that he used, so that worked fine. This one, I already commissioned this image, and it's a detail of the image that's on the back of the cover, and he was able to say, don't use the whole thing, zoom in on it. And so there is a difference between a cover artist and a cover designer. If you can, I've said this before, but if you can only afford one, you want the cover designer because they can make random public domain clip art look good, whereas an artist, it's a different mindset. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, I'd highly recommend Philip. I used him for my layout, and he's fantastic, and he does both.
No, Ryan, would you start and tell us what's coming out next for you and where you're headed?
Oh yeah, for me next, I'm working on another novel right now. Hopefully, I'll have it finished on my end by the end of the year, but it's not going to be published by the end of the year by any means. I'm gonna just keep making a go of this professionally, and you can find both of these books on Amazon. And I'd love for you to pick one up or pick one up today. So. Oh, please give a review. And that's just something for any of the area authors. If you get a copy of someone's book, giving a review is the best. It's huge. It's taken me 2 years to get 30 reviews on Monsters, and everyone says, how'd you get so many reviews? So there you go.
The next two books is in this series. I have books 5 and 6. It's a rescue animal series. And this will be coming out in November, and so be looking for events. We're going to have, I wrote the books as easy readers for grades 3, 4, and 5, and we're going to have the rescue horses at the book events. So bring your kids, bring your grandkids. They'll be able to meet the rescue horses. Unbelievable stories about these animals and the people who take care of them, and it's just a personal project of mine that I want to do, and so I'm doing it. There you go.
I have a book out on October 3rd. It's an anthology with 6 source books authors, Lee Greenwood, Margaret Brownlee, Roseanne Bittner, and 2 others. I can't remember their name, but sorry. But that's October 3rd. November 7th, I have the 3rd book of my Men of Legend series, and it's called To Marry a Texas Outlaw. Then I'll be done for this year. Yay! I am currently writing the 2nd book of a brand new series. The first book 1 will come out next year in November. So that's my life.
Very good. I have a short story coming out, anthology in about 2 weeks. It's called A Christmas Affair. It's a very sweet story. You will like it. So if it's going to be just an ebook because it's just a short thing. And I brought some books back there for Natalie said some people have never seen my books. If you're looking at the first of Ransom Canyon that hit the New York Times, you'll see this little cowboy on it talking about covers. We went through 11 covers before I approved that cover, and when I approved it, the cowboy was about this big, and when it came out, the cowboy was about this big. And the first reaction was, it's an English saddle. And I called the art director and said, Sean, you got a cowboy up. That's an English saddle. And he said, there's more than one kind of saddle? So, so you even the big publishing houses mess it up sometimes. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Oh yes. Okay.
I want to add one more thing. Go to a site called Wattpad, WATTPAD.com. It is a place, pardon?
What?
WATTPAD, Wattpad.com. It's a place where you can put your stories up, or you decide how much you want to put up there. A friend of mine, she put a story up. It got 1.5 million likes. A publisher picked her up immediately. They offered her a wonderful contract, but you can get feedback on maybe your first chapter. You don't know if it is working okay. You can get feedback. You can get noticed. Like she did. That was 1.5 million likes. They read her. I think she put the whole book up. And then now her book, it came out this month, and they are helping her promote it. Wattpad. Yeah, and it's all genres, all different kinds. So it's a great opportunity, and I wanted to pass it on. So.
Oh, I have a final thought.
Oh, okay.
So whatever lane you pick, and it's tons of information, it's an exciting industry, but one of my favorite sayings is there is no elevator to success, you have to take the stairs.
That's great.
All right. I guess since it came back to me, I'll go ahead and say I do have a newsletter, and I'd love for you to sign up for it. I need to get on this Wattpad. That sounds incredible. I do send out a free short story to my subscribers every month, and it's just a place I can send the stories that I don't, and they're fun, and they're little Twilight Zone-y, and sometimes they're slice of life. I don't have to pick a lane because it's my newsletter. So.
Who do I pass this back to? Does anybody need it? Are y'all having a drawing?
We're gonna do a drawing.
All right. I have some handouts back there if you